It's starting to stream.
Okay. Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 2nd, 10 a.m. This is a meeting of the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee and we're continuing our work on weatherization. So it's great to see some familiar faces, very familiar faces, and some new faces. We, in the last 3 weeks, we've been reviewing the energy landscape, hearing the Act 62 report, and I'd say one of the things that came out of that Act 62 report was a new term that we've adopted, which is the ecosystem of actors that are out there providing services already. And as we look to increase the amount of service we can deliver, particularly in weatherization, we wanted this committee, which has 2 new members, to get acquainted with the current set of energy efficiency utilities that are already out there doing your work, not only in your original products, whatever, electricity or gas, but also lately you've been expanding into, well, you have other services you deliver that reach over into the thermal and transportation space. So as we get started, I thought it'd be really helpful that for us all to better understand the ecosystem of actors and make sure that we're up to date, because I know you're running pilots, exciting pilots that are changing the way you operate. So with that, I'd like to call on you and work through an update for the committee, and then we'll have some discussion as well. And I'd like to start with Mr. Springer from Burlington Electric. Good morning.
Morning. Great to be with the committee, and appreciate the opportunity to talk a little about some of our work. We are at Burlington Electric. I'm Darren Springer, General Manager. We are a distribution utility and an efficiency utility, relatively unique structure that we have. So we run our Tier 3 incentive programs as a distribution utility through the Vermont Renewable Energy Standard. We also operate as an efficiency utility with a team of energy services professionals who provide energy efficiency services in Burlington. And there are several exciting developments happening, some of which are a result of this committee's work in prior legislative sessions. So I wanted to provide an update on that. Particularly coming through the COVID pandemic, the first program I just want to mention and provide an update on is our green stimulus effort. During the pandemic, very early on, back as early as April 7th, the mayor had announced that we would make an effort to launch a green stimulus program to support our customers during COVID-19 and support the clean energy jobs in the community, because we saw that there was obviously a shutdown of economic activity at that point. We anticipated that when it was safe to resume economic activity, many would be struggling. There might be businesses that needed to replace refrigeration equipment to stay open, or residents who might have an appliance that might fail. And we wanted to provide enhanced incentives to make it as affordable as possible to replace those types of systems with energy efficient systems, and to help customers who might be interested in things like heat pumps or other technologies to access those technologies. And in doing so, support getting the workforce, the contractors, the installers back to work in Burlington. We just reported last week that we've had significant success with the green stimulus enhanced incentives, particularly for heat pumps. We have seen a 5x increase in heat pump installations comparing the period prior to the pandemic, when we first launched our incentives, which was September of 2019 through May of 2020. If you compare that period to June of 2020 through the current time, we've seen about a 5x increase. Heat pump installers, anecdotally, in Burlington, it's very difficult now to get an appointment. They are actually quite fully subscribed in terms of customer interest, and we've heard appreciation for these incentives and other incentives around the state, helping them to get back to work doing the business of installing heat pumps for customers. So that program has been successful. I would also mention that of our 217 incentives that we tracked through the green stimulus effort, 36 of those went as an enhanced incentive to our low and moderate income customers. So we're beginning to see some access and affordability for low and moderate income customers with our bonus incentive that we provide with that program. I know we're talking about all sectors today, so I also want to mention that we've continued with our electric vehicle rebates as well. And likewise, we've seen some uptick through the green stimulus. We enhanced those incentives as well. And we've seen about 20% now of our total rebates in that sector are going either to support low and moderate income customers with an enhanced incentive or to support the purchase of more affordable pre-owned vehicles, which was a relatively new addition to our rebate structure. So with the green stimulus, we're offering a variety of different programs. Some of them are enhanced weatherization efforts that we'll pursue in partnership with VGS, who I know you'll hear from today. Some of them are related to appliance replacement and heating system replacement. We have 0% loans available for residential customers on an income qualified basis in partnership with 3 local credit unions. We have a 0% loan program for our small business customers through an EDA grant, Economic Development Administration grant received through the CARES Act. And that can help small businesses, restaurants, nonprofit organizations update their ventilation systems during the pandemic, install a takeout window if they need, and also enhance their energy efficiency of their systems. So we're seeing some success with the green stimulus. We're continuing those programs into 2021. And we are focusing through those programs, again, specifically on our low and moderate income customers where possible. One example, we're offering 100% coverage for electric energy efficiency upgrades in affordable housing developments in Burlington. That's kind of a unique offering. We probably won't be able to continue that indefinitely, but that's something we're trying to do to support our customers.
Okay.
So that's the green stimulus effort. I also wanted to mention for this committee in particular, we have pursued a filing with the Public Utility Commission related to Act 151. And Act 151, as you all may recall, provides the efficiency utilities with the opportunity to propose pilot programs over the current 3-year budget cycle that allow us some flexibility to broaden our scope, provided that we're doing so under budgetary constraints and doing so in a manner really that doesn't put upward pressure on rates. And we've proposed several programs within that scope, and we are awaiting action and review for those. Hopefully we'll see that in the coming month or so. But just to give you a sense of what we've proposed, much of it is really informed by our efforts with the green stimulus. We see Act 151 as an opportunity to take some of these programs that are working and continue them for a longer period of time. And that would include the enhanced electric vehicle incentive opportunity and the heat pump opportunity. It would also include supporting our electric vehicle auto dealer preferred network and building out capacity upstream with the auto dealers, as we've talked about, I think, during previous testimony. It would include a program where we're trying to support the drilling of exploratory wells for geothermal heat pump systems. We've actually seen some really significant fossil fuel reduction thanks to geothermal systems that have been installed in Burlington in commercial buildings and in schools. So we want to be able to support more customers looking at geothermal. That's an option that we filed for Act 151. And we are waiting for action on that. But just to give you a sense of the scope, we filed programs that over a 3-year period, if they were all approved, would total around 720,000 of additional resource in those different programs. So doing so would still keep us under our prior 3-year budget, as was one of the constraints placed in that legislation by the committee. So we're doing this in a way that does not increase, pressure on rates relative to the prior 3-year budget. So all of that said, I know that the one last comment I wanted to offer is we are still seeing challenges related to COVID-19 in terms of uptake for a number of programs. Obviously, we've been successful moving the needle with some of these incentives, but we still are seeing many projects that may be delayed. Think of commercial new construction. We would typically offer energy efficiency incentives for those. Many of those were delayed in 2020, and some are continued to be delayed in 2021. We are continuing to offer support for our customers who need assistance with flexibility on paying their bill over a longer period of time if they've fallen behind. We appreciate very much the legislature's VCAP program, the Customer Arrearage Assistance Program that was completed in December. It helped provide over $300,000 of arrearage relief to BED customers. And we are going to be talking in Senate Finance today about that program and hopefully about opportunities to provide additional assistance, because we are aware, as I think every utility is, that we're seeing arrearages, overdue bills that even with the VCAP program are continuing to accrue at alarming rates for customers. So I think additional assistance may be needed. And we are, continuing to see the results from electric energy efficiency in Burlington. Based on the 2019 data, we as a community are using more than 8% less, or over 8% less electricity in 2019 than compared to 1989. So we anticipate that will change. With strategic electrification, we anticipate being able to use more electricity, but doing so in a way that reduces fossil fuel use in the future. But you've seen the results from electric energy efficiency over that time frame in the fact that our community is using less electricity and our customers are saving a significant amount on their bills each year in avoided costs. So we'll continue our electric efficiency programs. We're excited to offer these pilots potentially under Act 151. We're excited to continue our green stimulus effort in 2021. And I think I'll leave it there and see if I can provide additional information through any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm looking to see if the committee has any questions. I have a couple of my own. Senator McDonald.
Just to the very end, you said you use 8% less electricity than you did date. So what was the date?
1989.
Okay. And what's the state average for the reduction in the use of electricity for all the utilities in Vermont since 1989?
I believe that over that period of time, and Rebecca can correct me if I get this wrong, because I've looked at these numbers, and obviously we didn't start with Efficiency Vermont until later in that time period. But I believe over that same period, state electric use was up roughly 10%. And I believe national use was up over 30%.
So statistics that we've gotten that says Vermont uses 15% less electricity than it used to are incorrect or measured differently or
measured differently. Measured differently. I think when Efficiency Vermont would talk about how much savings they've achieved, it's over a period that I think is between 2000 and today. Whereas we go back to 1989 because Burlington voters approved an efficiency bond for $11.3 million in 1990. So our efforts in investing in efficiency, we really track back to that date.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I hope we can find a way to make that the achievements just mentioned in measured in apples compared to other utilities. And I was going to, my next question was, how do Burlington, Vermont's electric rates compare to other utilities in the state of Vermont?
Well, we are now in our 12th year since we last raised electric rates. I believe our rates are some of the lowest now. I believe we may be second or third lowest in the state based on the latest data that I had seen. I do want to say, though, that said, COVID-19 is putting some pressure on us in that regard. So I can't speak to kind of how long that might continue. We're certainly not raising rates during our current fiscal year, which is ending in June, but we are seeing some pressure now based on COVID impacts.
My last question, Mr. Chair, was how does the energy efficiency charge paid by Burlington Electric compare to the other utilities throughout the state?
So our charge has been lower historically, and obviously we have relatively compact geographic service territory, and we have a different customer base in some respects than the statewide average. One example, we have 60% of our residential customers are renters, and we tend to have kind of a lower per capita usage based in part on that. And if you think about it as well, we have, in terms of energy use, residential is a relatively small amount for us. It's around 25%, commercial is around 75% of our electric use. So some of those numbers may be different than what the statewide averages look like or what they look like for different utilities, but that's our picture in Burlington.
Well, I would ask us to think about if Burlington Electric ratepayers paid the same percentage of an energy efficiency charge as the rest of the folks in the state of Vermont, how might those proceeds have been spent to enhance the progress in getting off electricity? But that's a future question.
Okay, so Mr. Springer, thanks for that update. It's great to hear what's going on. There's always a lot of stuff cooking in your shop, I know. The quick question, you were just mentioning rate pressure due to COVID. So are you seeing a declining volume and so it's putting some upward rate pressure? Is that what you're?
Yeah, there's really three kind of impacts, three discrete financial impacts from COVID. One is we have seen lower sales to customers throughout the pandemic, particularly in the commercial sector. In some cases, residential use may be up a little bit because people are at home, they're using more electricity at home. But in the commercial sector, we've seen decreases that more than offset, unfortunately, the increase in residential, and overall sales have been down, meaning less volume, less revenue. The second piece is we have seen capital projects disrupted, both because of different types of public health restrictions that are appropriately in place, but also due to supply chain disruptions. It's getting very difficult in some cases to get the equipment needed for capital projects to proceed. And when you're budgeting for capital projects with a certain amount of labor associated with them, and if those projects don't proceed, then those labor costs come back to the general operating statement, and that puts negative financial pressure on the utility. And then lastly, we discussed earlier the arrearages that we're seeing being so much higher are essentially a negative pressure on our cash position. We don't have as much cash on hand as we would have had those arrearages been at normal levels.
So I know that you're going to be in finance to talk about that, and I'm hopeful that we'll be, renewing the VCAP program, another dose of funds for it. But can you just quantify that arrearage, and then we'll go to Senator Weissman.
I can. So for us, if you're looking at the 30-day arrearages, we're seeing a current kind of 30-day arrearages are at 1.17 million compared to just over 500,000 at this time last year. So about 127% increase year to year on the 30-day arrearages. If you look at the 60-day arrearages, comparing this year to prior years, we're seeing as much as a 284% increase in what would normally be happening this time of year versus what's happening during COVID.
Great, thank you. Senator Weissman.
So what did Burlington Electric do to help their customers that were in arrearages apply for the money that we now is exhausted, but did have out there?
Yes, we did a variety of things, including having our customer care representatives make direct phone calls to a list of customers that were potentially eligible and walk them through what the process was and help them submit their applications. In some cases, we had repeated follow-up contacts with customers to encourage them to apply prior to the deadline. We also did a variety of announcements, both media and social media, Front Porch Forum. We did messages on our bills related to the VCAP program and media interviews. And so we really tried to use every outreach channel that we had, probably most effectively direct phone calls with customers who were impacted to let them know it was a potentially time-limited opportunity and that it was a relatively straightforward application process and obviously would benefit them in catching up on their bills and benefit the entire community in terms of reducing the arrearages.
And do you have any idea of how many applications and what the dollar amount of that was?
I do. We were able to have 50 applications approved for commercial customers, and that was a little over 86,000 in assistance. And we had over 480 residential customers applications approved, and that was over 259,000 in assistance. So total for us was 531 in terms of the number of customers and 345,000 in terms of the assistance that was provided in that last round of VCAP.
And is the Public Service Department keeping track of your arrearages now? So with if there's any hope in going forward with the federal money coming down, that we would get up-to-date numbers from you?
Yes, the Public Service Department has been providing kind of aggregated arrearage data and is keeping in touch with all the utilities. So we're always happy to provide our own updated data to the extent that it's helpful. And then we also work with the other utilities and the department to provide the aggregated data statewide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McDonald.
Two questions. You were talking about your arrearages are higher this year by, I think, 127% than last year. How does that compare to the other utilities in the state?
I think in some cases we actually may be a little bit higher, and in some cases I know we are actually lower. We're seeing less impact in some cases than some other utilities are. So I think overall, if you look at the different utilities, they're all seeing significant impacts on arrearages. In many cases, for us, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. For a larger utility like Green Mountain Power, it would be in the millions of dollars. In terms of the percentages, I think for Vermont Electric Co-op, we're a little bit higher than they are. And if you look at Green Mountain Power, they're a little bit higher than we are. So everybody's experiencing pretty significant issues, as far as I'm aware.
So my question was in percentages. So thank you for putting that into end. And secondly, your reach out, telephone reach out, which congratulations for your work on that area. How does the result of that enterprise or public service fit in with the rest of the utilities throughout the state?
Yeah, I believe many utilities were doing similar efforts to reach out to customers. And I know it may be kind of counterintuitive to think that folks wouldn't want to just jump at applying for this assistance, because obviously if you're behind on your bill and you have an opportunity to catch up with assistance, that's a great thing. But in a lot of cases, particularly in the commercial sector, we have businesses that are struggling just to kind of survive day to day in this pandemic. Small businesses, restaurants, who are challenged. And so getting their attention on this issue and this time-limited opportunity that we had required multiple follow-up phone calls and emails and other communications. And I know that other utilities were making similar efforts because it really was an all-hands-on-deck opportunity to get customers caught up on some of their bills. So I don't think we were necessarily unique in making phone calls. I think other utilities did that as well.
Thank you.
So I'd like to, I was taking notes while you were speaking. I had a couple things I'd just like to follow up on, make sure I understood. And so congratulations on seeing, heat pump installations going up 500%. And how does that work for you all? Do you identify partners? Do you facilitate the connection between customer and vendor? Because, well, let me just double check one thing. BED staff's never out there putting these in, correct? It's always that you work with vendors.
That is correct. We do not install heat pumps ourselves. We do provide, obviously, the kind of technical assistance for our customers and incentives. And what we have with heat pumps, similar to what I mentioned with electric vehicles, is we've developed a preferred heat pump installer network. And it's right on our website at burlingtonelectric.com. If somebody clicks on ways to save, there's a tab for heat pumps. And we have 6 different local heat pump installers that are part of our program that we recommend to our customers. And to be a part of the program, they have to commit to offering the correct technology, the cold climate heat pumps that can really provide benefits in Vermont. And they have to, help our customers. They have to agree to help our customers in terms of the education process of how to use a heat pump to get the maximum benefit. And while we don't yet have a demand response component with our heat pumps, we are exploring different ways that we'll be able to manage demand from heat pumps in the future. That may be with devices that are installed with the heat pumps that can help automatically, with the customer's consent, reduce usage during high peak times, or it may be with a rate like we have for our electric vehicles. We have a special rate, so if you charge during off peak, you save money. We may be able to develop something like that for heat pumps. So this preferred installer network is agreeing, obviously, to help us get those technologies out to customers as well when we're prepared to offer them.
Great. Does that include heat pump hot water heaters as well?
Many of them do install heat pump hot water heaters. We don't have the network wasn't designed specifically around that technology, but we do have incentives for heat pump hot water heaters, and we are seeing some customer interest in that as well.
Okay. You were mentioning low and moderate income folks, just to make sure that we're thinking the same way. Do you classify, is that 80% to 120 of AMI?
We actually, we use City of Burlington CEDO metrics that are designed kind of more unique to Burlington. So I don't know that it overlaps perfectly with the metric that's used at the state level. It's a Burlington specific metric that we're using.
Okay. On EVs, you were talking about pre-owned. So is that pre-owned EVs or pre-owned internal combustion but high mileage?
Pre-owned EVs or plug-in hybrids.
Okay. You mentioned enhanced weatherization, but I thought you were saying that we might hear about that from Ms. Foster. So I don't know if that's something you want to talk more about now, or she's going to get to it because she's Efficiency Vermont's your partner in that part of the work. I don't know.
Yeah, and actually with Burlington Electric, because our customer base overlaps almost entirely with VGS in Burlington, it tends to be that Burlington Electric and VGS are both providing efficiency support to the same customers. So with the green stimulus effort, we are exploring offering programs with VGS that would provide enhanced weatherization support. And that would really be across sectors. We're willing to kind of boost our our incentives, whether it's residential, whether it's for multifamily buildings, or in some cases for commercial buildings. That program was designed prior to some of the new initiatives that I think VGS is focused on. And obviously, I know there is a conversation about weatherization in the legislature as well. But for us, we tend on weatherization to be less critical unless somebody has a heat pump installed, because if they're using a conventional gas heating system, VGS tends to provide most of the support for weatherization in Burlington. I would just mention too, on weatherization, we are actively proposing the mayor and the electric department and other partners to the city council standards that would apply for rental properties that would require weatherization of rental properties over a period of time in Burlington. So that's also a policy conversation at the local level that could spur some additional weatherization investment in Burlington.
Great, thank you. Good to hear you're working on that one. It seems like one of the tougher nuts to crack is getting rental properties weatherized. You mentioned that you support zero interest loans, which sounds like an irresistible offer, but we're always trying to figure out what it is that nudges someone over into action from thinking about it. Can you say a little more about that role? Because, for this weatherization project that we're talking about, stepped up program for the state, one of the tools we're looking at is buying down interest rates. So you can't go much lower than zero unless you're going to be paying people to take loans. But how's that going, and what advice do you have for the committee based on your experience?
I think it's interesting way that you framed it, because you would think that a 0% loan would be quite attractive, and I think in normal economic times it would be. What we're finding is, although we're offering those products, we're having a very tough time getting interest. People and businesses are very reluctant to take on additional debt right now, even if it is at 0%, and even if the terms are fairly generous. I mentioned our 0% loan program for small businesses. It offers terms out to 84 months. It offers a variety of different purposes, and we put in incentives in on top of the 0% loan to try to buy down the cost of the equipment. And we have not yet had very much interest in people signing up for that program. So I think the current economic climate is really limiting interest in additional debt. So right now, we're seeing the most interest where we're putting the most cash on the table, essentially. The heat pump program I mentioned, we're paying, in some cases, an incentive that's over half, and for low moderate income customers, up to 3/4 of the cost of installing the heat pump. And that is moving the market, even in this economic climate. But we've seen less interest in loan products at the moment, unfortunately. We're hopeful that interest will resume as the economic climate improves.
You were mentioning the Act 151 pilot work on EVs or cold climate heat pumps. So if we're in a tough economic period at the moment, because if I'm remembering right, everyone just started a new 3-year term, right? 21, 22, 23. So does that allow you to roll over funds if you're unable to deploy something in 21? It's not a use it or lose it situation?
That's correct. There is more flexibility within a 3-year budget cycle than there is to roll funds from one 3-year budget cycle to the next. So we certainly had unused funds at the end of the prior 3-year budget cycle that will go towards reducing rates in the current 3-year budget cycle, as opposed to going towards new programs. But if we were to be undersubscribed this year, which we're hopeful we won't, because we're offering these great incentives, we hope people will be able to take advantage. We would have some flexibility to propose rolling those funds forward to a future year in the budget cycle.
Great. Well, thank you very, very much for, let me just double check the room. I don't see any hands up.
Great to see you, Mr. Springer.
Good to see all of you. Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Thanks again. for coming in and keeping us up to date with what's going on out there. And with that, I'd like to turn to Ms. Foster. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Thank you, Senator Bray and the committee for having me here today. For the record, my name is Rebecca Foster, the Director of Efficiency Vermont. And I do have some slides to share, but before I dive into that, I just wanted to share a few highlights from 2020. You know, as Darren was just mentioning, in a very difficult year, I'm very proud to share that Efficiency Vermont was really active supporting the state's response and rebuilding the economy in many different ways. And that ranged from joining GMP, VGS, and the Department of Labor in taking calls to get thousands of Vermonters registered for unemployment insurance, to launching new programs to support nonprofits during the difficult time when social services were in such high demand, offering new programs for farmers and food banks and struggling small businesses. It also included running an $18 million program to improve indoor air quality in over 300 K-12 schools throughout the state, and doubling down on weatherization projects to help families get through a really difficult winter. So that experience with weatherization is what I'll be talking about today, and I am going to just go ahead and share some slides now. So give me one moment to do that.
Looks good.
Coming through?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, to begin, I just wanted to again thank the committee and also reference Governor Scott's support for the focus on weatherization and stress the need to make smart investments with this one-time money. The investments in weatherization, will lead to a lifetime of savings for homeowners. So Efficiency Vermont certainly supports policymakers' efforts to increase weatherization and save Vermonters money on their home heating costs. As a quick background, this is the first time I'm in front of the committee this year, and with some new committee members, I wanted to share a few pieces of perspective about the work that Efficiency Vermont does. Starting off, I do want to just state unequivocally that Vermont's investment in energy efficiency is paying off. And to the question Senator McDonald asked a few moments ago, we, looking back over the results of Efficiency Vermont over the years, we know Vermont would be using about 17% more electricity than it does today in the absence of all of the efficiency programs that we've run. Over that last 20-year period since Efficiency Vermont began, we've developed a statewide infrastructure for delivering energy programs across the state. That includes staff in nearly every county, strong relationships up and down the supply chain, and with customers who view us as a trusted partner and a place to go for advice and support. And the approach we take is to transform markets. And so what that means is really making energy efficient products and services more affordable over time, which then makes energy costs more affordable. That includes training and offering incentives to distributors, contractors, and retailers, which an average consumer would never really see or be aware of, but it makes the products that they buy cheaper and more accessible. And our work also includes direct support for Vermonters considering an efficiency upgrade through incentives and training and financing and technical advice. And we do this work through a network of partners, including the utilities and the other energy efficiency utilities who are here today. So based on that work, we have helped Vermonters make efficiency upgrades that will save over $2.6 billion over time, and will also result in about 12 million metric tons of carbon reduction. And we do that supporting a robust energy efficiency workforce of about 400 businesses. We offer them training, technical support, marketing expertise, and I'll touch more on that workforce component of what we do in just a few minutes.
Can I ask a quick question on that last slide? Sure. Sorry to interrupt. The number I remember from last year was that the aggregate investment through energy efficiency charges over the 20-year period was, it might have been 19 when I was totaling it up. I think it was 658 million. I don't know what the current figure is, but I just wanted to double check my math and also compare the 658 or whatever that number is to the 2.6 billion.
Exactly. Yep. Those numbers are in the absolute right ballpark, and we can get you the updated numbers, including
Okay.
the full 2020 accounting, if the committee is interested in that data. But yes, a clear cost-effective investment of the state. Investing in efficiency, and those efficiency investments yield benefits over many years, so that we're spending much less than we otherwise would be on energy costs.
Thank you.
Great. So moving forward, and please do jump into stuff if there are questions as we go. I did want to focus in and begin a specific focus on weatherization, and this is a look at the funding sources that we use to run weatherization programs and other thermal efficiency programs across the state. Efficiency Vermont is active statewide, but not in the Vermont Gas territory. So VGS will share more about their work. We collaborate quite a bit to make sure that the programs are complementary and not confusing to customers or their supply chain. But when I speak about our work, that's the footprint that I'm talking about. Most of the weatherization work at Efficiency Vermont is funded through the thermal budget, not the electric side. And that work comes from two sources, the forward capacity market and the regional greenhouse gas initiative. And just to give you a sense of scale, that budget is about $7 million this year. There is a small amount of work that we do on weatherization that is funded from the electric funding. Act 62 provided us with a one-time allocation of existing funds focused on moderate income weatherization. That was $2.25 million, and that was available through 2019 and 2020. And then going forward, we are able to weatherize homes with electric funding if the homes are predominantly heated with electricity. There's still a small number in the state where that's the case, but as heat pumps continue to gain prominence and gain traction in the market, that likely will increase over time, and more electric funding may be able to be used to weatherize those homes. But just to give you a sense, in 2021, the budget for that, the expected spending there is just about $240,000. So it's much smaller than the thermal side of our work. Looking forward, the funding sources that have served Vermonters so well, providing funding for weatherization and other thermal efficiency projects, are projected to decline fairly sharply in the coming years. And this is largely due to a decline in projected revenues from the forward capacity market. The value of capacity payments fluctuates from one year to the next due to many market forces. And so what we see going forward is that the expected revenue that Vermont will get from the forward capacity market is set to drop over the coming years from a high point of $10.9 million in 2019 down, to, as you see here, just around $4 million. That this chart and this projection includes both the forward capacity market and the regional greenhouse gas initiative payments into the state. So, this underscores the importance of today's committee meeting and the importance of the state looking carefully at how to generate additional revenues to keep weatherization work going strong.
Right. Can I ask a quick question? If someone said, how much is that RGGI payment as a portion of this? I don't know the answer to that. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, so the component of the total thermal budget that RGGI makes up hovers around $2 million. So in 2018, it was 1.77. It's about 2.2 million anticipated for 2020, 2021. So it's just around that 2 million. And then the forward capacity market is really where the variation has been over the past years, and where the high revenues, back in 2019 of over $10 million are coming from. But RGGI is smaller and fairly stable.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So despite the funding reductions that we see on the horizon, I think Efficiency Vermont has demonstrated in 2020 that with adequate funding and the right mix of programs, we can scale weatherization as a state. And so I mentioned the Act 62 funding that we were deploying in 2020. That's enabled a lot of the activity that you see here. So our offer in 2020 included both incentives and financing. And I do agree with Aaron's comment about the importance of having both of those components. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. The offer was that income qualified customers received 75% of project costs back as a rebate, plus either low interest or no interest financing, depending on the need and their income level.
Mr. Chair, is
Senator McDonald.
moderate income Vermonters defined? Is it in this discussion?
The way that we define moderate income is under 120% area median income. And then the low income would be under 80% area median income.
Thank you.
So to continue, the offer that we launched was available for low and moderate income families. And, we saw with this package of incentives plus financing, even in a pandemic, that people took action. And when we launched that comprehensive offer, we saw the number of projects that moderate income families completed jump from one quarter to the next by a factor of 4. So we saw quadruple the uptake and project completion after that project offer was on the table. And you can see here, overall over the entire course of 2020, 58% of projects that we completed were done with that moderate income group. And that's really remarkable. We have not had that kind of program participation before. And, to me, that speaks to the importance of having multiple supports at the table. So I do want to share a little bit about the ecosystem that weatherization programs are taking place within. And just grounding the next few slides where I'll work through some of those components, I have a quote here from the PUC's Act 62 report. You heard from the PUC last week, and I think it's just important to ground this discussion in those findings. We were glad to participate in the stakeholder process for the last 2 years and really appreciate their work in pulling together both reports last year and just recently. And we agree with the findings that, a new entity or new program really isn't necessary, but that the state should continue to support the existing ecosystem of program administrators and market actors. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that ecosystem looks like on the coming slides and share the role that Efficiency Vermont plays in this ecosystem. So first I'll talk about workforce development, and then incentives, building science expertise, and then customer and partner relationships. So on workforce, you heard from Sarah Phillips from OEO last week, and I just want to emphasize my agreement and support with what she told you about the importance of workforce. We are limited in our ability to scale by workforce constraints, and our current workforce is certainly delivering the quality needed to protect health and safety as they make home upgrades, but is not sufficient today to ramp up and meet the state's goals. And increasing that workforce does take time and investment. Efficiency Vermont has played a role there in 2 ways. One, working with the Energy Efficiency Excellence Network, which is a network that we created several years ago and that now includes over 400 businesses across the state. 66 are home performance contractors, 193 are HVAC contractors, and we provide those businesses both upfront and ongoing training, as well as technical support and a hotline for contractors out in the field to call our staff and get advice and help troubleshoot issues that they're having with projects. And that's been going very well. It's been a really significant step forward for the state to have that network available. And we've done specific work with partners like NeighborWorks of Western Vermont over the course of the last year to build out that network, in particular the home performance with Energy Star contractor piece in areas of the state like Bennington County and in the Northeast Kingdom, where there were fewer contractors available to meet customers' needs. We've also worked with VTC to grow the workforce and partnered with them with the Act 62 funding to run several trainings and support contractors in achieving their BPI certification. This is an industry standard, Building Performance Institute certification that really gives the credential that contractors need to be able to find work in this industry and ensure that they're following all health and safety guidelines as they upgrade customers' homes. We covered 100% of the costs for that course, including a stipend to the contractor participants to enable their attendance. And Efficiency Vermont staff actually led the training. So that's something that we hope to be able to continue in future years. It had a very positive result of getting new contractors into the workforce over the last year.
Great. We know this is, a potential for sort of a bottleneck in growing a program that we'd like to not just grow by 20%, but to double and double again, to really get to scale. do you think the programming we have is adequate if it's simply offered more often, or does it need to be brought to more campuses? Or if you were to really envision a more robust program to create a workforce of the size we need for that a decade long of work, doing 120,000 more homes, I know that's probably something you haven't penciled out, but what are your thoughts about how we grow a program that helps create a workforce of that scale?
It's a great question. It's one I'm happy to share a few ideas on. I think what I've been talking about with several colleagues and other EEUs around the table who are interested in growing the workforce has been replicating what we know works. So we know working with existing infrastructure can be extremely effective, partnering with organizations like VTC, but also bringing that further back into the educational experience, working with technical high schools around the state to introduce them to this as a potential path that they can take. So I think it's scaling up what we know works and also expanding our reach and connections back into high schools, middle schools, so that young people see this as a career pathway for them that will enable them to stay in Vermont and get a good working wage job that they can support a family through. So I think there's a few different facets to it, and I would definitely encourage strong connections to the existing workforce development community and understanding how we can build better partnerships with them.
Sure. Amongst the people who come to the trainings, does it include anyone who might be called currently a traditional supplier of home heating fuel? Are you getting people from that side in?
I'll have to ask the trainers and get that information back to you. My impression, based on what I've seen so far, is that more of the participants are, kind of contractors, carpenters, coming from the residential renovation and residential construction trade, looking to, deepen their skills and get into weatherization and home performance work, because that's a value add and it's a skill build that they can then offer more to their customers. But so I'm not sure if any participants have been from the heating fuel sector, but I can check on that for you.
Great, thank you.
So then moving forward, in addition to robust workforce, scaling weatherization requires customer demand. So in our experience, as I mentioned a moment ago, building that demand takes both incentives and financing. And as you can see here, the average cost of a weatherization project that we see through our programs is around $8,000. And that's simply out of the realm of possibility for many low and moderate income homeowners. But by pairing incentives and financing together, we can make the projects feasible. And we can overcome a strong aversion to taking on debt, which is something that Darren mentioned a moment ago. I would say that, the experience that Burlington Electric Department described a moment ago is something that we see at Efficiency Vermont as well. And I think we also see it not solely in the current pandemic-related economic environment. This is kind of a long-standing aversion to debt. It's our Yankee frugality that we don't want to take on more than we can pay for out of pocket or save up for. And back in 2019, Efficiency Vermont fielded a customer survey asking about reasons for taking on a home performance project, reasons for not taking on a project, and we asked about recipients' willingness to take out a loan to complete an energy project, and only 23% said that that's something they would do. And even if the loan was at 0% interest, we see less than a quarter of people really being willing to take that route. So, I think financing is certainly a piece of the puzzle, but there's more that's needed. And what we saw back in 2020 was by combining loans and incentives and putting that very attractive offer on the table, we saw families will participate. This slide shows, of the 860 loans that Efficiency Vermont helped generate in 2020, the breakdown across income level is, quite robust. So we had 36% of people, participating in this offer who make below $60,000 a year. Another 36 are making between $60,000 and $90,000 a year. So, we've demonstrated that these kinds of programs are not just for the affluent, but it takes multiple supports in order to get these kinds of outcomes. The next thing I'll talk about is just building science expertise. And you heard from Smitty at Capstone last week, weatherization is not the same as construction. That's why it takes Building Performance Institute certification and training. It's building science. And that building science training really goes hand in hand with workforce development. These are highly skilled jobs. There's a high demand for the work. And, once people are trained, this should be a stable career path for any Vermonter. So Efficiency Vermont is working to support this, as I mentioned, through the training and technical support that we provide, and are finding that this is a good pathway. That there's more to do here to make sure that we can continue to build up the workforce to meet the growing demand over time, but that it's definitely worthy of its specific investment because it's such an important part of the process. And then, the last component of the ecosystem that I just want to touch on is customer and partner relationships. So, really the whole group, a whole existing infrastructure and networks of organizations working together. I won't run through the whole list. Obviously, I'm here today with colleagues from the other energy efficiency utilities, but all of us are working together to support the same goals that the state has. Before closing with some questions on weatherization for the committee to consider, I just wanted to speak for a moment about the State Energy Management Program, which is another component of the administration's VT WARMS proposal. We appreciate the administration's support of SEMP. It's a successful model and it has high potential to scale. And Efficiency Vermont's program design expertise has helped quickly build an effective and ongoing program. So we work closely with Buildings and General Services, gathering benchmark data on all state buildings, working to recruit and hire program staff, writing up the documents and procedures that underpin the program, working together on projects and getting our energy consultants, tied in to identify new opportunities and improve the process, and covering 3 full-time equivalent staff at BGS to manage the program. And this has resulted in consistently strong results year over year, and you can see some of those numbers here on the slide. Expansion of this work is already underway through a partnership with Buildings and General Services, the Department of Public Service, and Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And there's been, a total of about $600,000 committed for the first 2 years of the pilot, some from the Clean Energy Development Fund and from V-Light. And our understanding from Secretary Walk's testimony is that the $5 million budget proposal would support a revolving loan fund and help fund an initial round of projects, which would really help get this program off the ground and help more towns reduce their energy costs more quickly. So this is something I just wanted to mention as a component of the VT WARMS proposal that Efficiency Vermont is in strong support of. And then, lastly, returning to weatherization and just, speaking as the energy efficiency service provider that's been in the space for 20 years, I just want to leave you with a few questions to consider as lawmakers. I think the questions for policymakers are how to ensure that we're, one, making best use of the limited one-time funding that's available. Secondly, making sure that Vermonters can access the right mix of financing and incentives to make these projects accessible to them. And then thirdly, ensuring that the weatherization workforce is ready to meet demand for the projects and ready to scale this up as a jobs program and an economic development program just as much as it's an efficiency program and a climate program. So I'm going to remove these slides from the screen now, and then we can discuss any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I'm looking to see if there are any questions from the committee. Not seeing any at the moment. I'll start with your very last point about the questions about allocations and going.
A few hands up.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't see. I didn't see hands. So
Mark,
let me, Senator McDonald.
In listening to your presentation, it seems like is the lack of workforce to move forward your most immediate challenge?
I would say the precipitous decline in funding that is expected over the next few years is the underlying challenge, because without that funding, providing the workforce development, the training becomes much harder. Providing incentives and financing to see customers take advantage of these opportunities and actually complete projects becomes that much harder. So I would say the underpinning issue for Efficiency Vermont is that forecasted drop in revenues coming from the forward capacity market. And that's underscored by the PUC's Act 62 report, where they identify lack of sustained and consistent funding as being a #1 issue as well.
Mr. Chair, is funding approved, is training of a workforce an approved expense of your funding?
It is. It is a component of the work that we do. And at the same time, it also is not something that is our sole purpose or function. So, as you know, we need to report all of our results up to the Public Utility Commission. And at the end of the day, they are looking at the number of projects, the cost effectiveness of those projects, the amount of energy we saved, and the cost that it took us to save that energy. So investing in workforce is not one of the endpoints that we measure, but it's one of the things that we need to do in order to achieve the results that we have in front of us that the PUC has set.
Chicken and egg, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Right. Well, we're getting used to chicken and egg problems there. You mentioned on your last slide a question about the planning going forward, and I think so. That's a question we're going to be coming back to in this committee next week, hearing from the department and the PUC, because if, quite frankly, if we're talking about, sometimes I've been using the concept of a funnel. We're talking about multiple revenue streams coming together to flow into this ecosystem. As we gather more money, someone needs to, one, receive it, allocate it, and then track performance to meet our fiduciary responsibility. And I think that's one of it's still out there as a totally genuine question. A model at hand is maybe looking at how money comes in, and the department works with the PUC to do budget setting with the energy efficiency utilities. And maybe that's a scalable model, or it's just a model that we move on, or there's another way to do it. But right now, a concern that I see, I'd say personally, just speaking for me, very thankful that we're seeing increased money coming into the system, and in this case, with a appropriation, for instance, to VHFA. It's a creative way of building things, but narrow appropriations to individual players is very different than aggregating funds, having metrics to allocate funds, and then evaluating performance so that we know we're making the best choices on behalf of the people we represent. So that's on the table for next week. So I'm just spending a little time on that because I think it's a really important question for the committee. We're not pressed with it yet, but as we look to raise funds, we're going to need a paradigm to handle the funds. So I don't know if you have any response to that, or if not, I'll look to other questions in the room. All right, so we've been going for a little more than an hour, and I'm trying to see that we take regular breaks so that we don't all freeze up and lock in place like the Tin Man on all these Zoom meetings. So it's 11:04. We'll take a break and resume at 11:15, and then hear from Vermont Gas at that point. So as always, I'm trained to say people may well want to mute their microphones and turn off their videos because the stream will continue during our break. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, it is 11:15. Everyone looks refreshed. Great to see. Um, and Jude, if you can pull down our on a brief pause, thank you. And Ms. Smith, I know you had a colleague here who I don't see at the moment. Are you taking over? Oh, and there's Mr. Donnelly. Okay, great. So everybody's here. Love to hear from Vermont Gas. We know you're out there in the same ecosystem doing work. So take it away, please.
That's exactly right. So thanks so much for the opportunity today to come and speak to you all about, our role within this ecosystem. I too really like the concept of that, and to be able to stand by our great partners in Efficiency Vermont and Burlington Electric to talk about VGS's role. So I'm Tiana Smith, and I am Senior Director of Strategy here at VGS. I have along with me Richard Donnelly, who is our Energy Innovation Manager. Richard was at VEIC for 10 years before he joined us earlier this year, and has been really instrumental in helping us design what our energy efficiency program of the future will look like. So I will get right into it. So similar to Rebecca, I know that there's a couple of you new to the committee, and so we'll talk just briefly about VGS, who we are, and then talk a little bit more about the context of VGS within this space. And so what role do we have in the greenhouse gas emissions, and what opportunity lies there? Our plan and our answer for that, and then past, present, and future of weatherization, and then of course any time at the end for questions or as we go along. So VGS at a glance, around 54,000 customers, really serving Northwest Vermont corridor, the only natural gas utility. And since 1993, we've invested over 45 million in energy efficiency. We are, as was mentioned earlier, in this next 3-year period for our demand resource plan. Over the next 3 years, we plan to generate over 7,000 incentives and eliminate 13,000 metric tons of CO2 in the next 3 years as well. A couple of years ago, we launched our first in the nation program where customers could volunteer to purchase and offset their usage with renewable natural gas. And I'll talk a little bit more about our vision for the future, but we have committed to be net zero by 2050 with a shorter term goal of being reducing 30% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And you can see there is just a picture of our customer breakdown as well as our sales volume. So the context, and you may recognize this graphic. It's from the amazing report that EAN puts out every year, and I know you all have heard from Jared this session as well. I think it's important to note that natural gas accounts for less than 7% of the state's overall greenhouse gas emissions. And we still have the potential to touch 54,000 customers. So while we certainly contribute to the building thermal and the greenhouse gas emissions within that sector, there are plenty of other opportunities as well, which I'll talk about in the next slide. We both embrace the impacts that we have to customers' carbon footprint, and we recognize the role that we play for customers within that as a natural gas company. And we really feel a responsibility to help customers lower that. And that's why it's really exciting to talk about energy efficiency today, because that's such a key component in us being able to lower the carbon footprint and achieve our plan. Most greenhouse gas emissions. Yep. Oh,
sorry. Just a quick question on I didn't know if you're about to leave this slide. I can wait till you're about to leave, and then.
I'm not about to leave.
Okay. Well, on the building thermal bar there, can you roughly break out the natural gas component of that bar versus all other fuels that are used for thermal?
Yeah, in terms of what our contribution is to that, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know that we have done that breakdown before. Building thermal, it's predominantly, I mean, the last bullet kind of speaks to this, but most homes are heated with oil or propane, obviously in Vermont.
Yeah,
and so
right.
6 out of 10. And so the vast majority of those greenhouse gas emissions within building thermal will be from oil and propane, with just 7% being from natural gas. But I'm happy to get you the exact breakdown.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So as such, VGS is really uniquely positioned to help in decarbonizing the thermal sector. This is another graphic that I pulled from the EAN progress report, which really shows everything that we have to do to meet the Paris Agreement, broken down between transportation, thermal, electric, and other. And while we have a lot of opportunity within the thermal sector, because we have a service team that's capable of potentially installing cold climate heat pumps, we have our energy efficiency team that is committed to boosting home weatherizations. We also have an opportunity to influence the electrification and the other categories here as well, with non-pipe customer growth. And that would certainly be with partnering with other DUs like Green Mountain Power, Burlington Electric, and then considering hydrogen, geothermal, district energy, other ways in which we can decarbonize our total fuel supply, and again through non-pipe alternatives. So all of that is really the context of how VGS works within the overall sort of ecosystem of utilities within VGS. Late in 2019, and I know Neil spoke to you all about this earlier this week when he was talking about weatherization, but we launched our commitment to climate, and that is to be net zero by 2050 with a shorter term goal of dropping 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. I mention this because energy efficiency is foundational in us accomplishing this plan. And so we certainly want to make sure that we're advancing renewable natural gas, but boosting energy efficiency is key in getting this done, as well as leading through innovation. So I spoke about that on the earlier slide, possibilities for hydrogen, geothermal, and so really reaching out to our DUs and leveraging the partnerships that we've built over the years to look for innovation that can help decarbonize. Now I'm going to turn it over to Richard. Certainly with the announcement of this climate plan, we realized that dramatically boosting energy efficiency was going to take redesign of our program, and he's going to talk a little bit about what that will look like and sort of the present and the future for that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tiana, and thank you to the committee for the invitation to speak and discuss weatherization and thermal initiatives today. Before we dive into some of our programmatic efforts, maybe I should say penguin plunge, given the weather. Before we dive into those, I thought it might be good to call out some of the special initiatives that VGS is focused on related to weatherization. And as we sit in our homes these days during the pandemic, day after day, I think even hour after hour, I'm acutely aware of the weatherization qualities of my own home. And so I think this is probably the same mindset that many folks have these days when they're working from home or spending so much time at home. I think of comfort, number one. I also think of health-related benefits, but also because I live on one of the busiest roads in Vermont, Shelburne Road, I also think of noise and the impact of noise. That's a good segue into one of our key initiatives here. You may have heard in the news around the Burlington Airport, the BTV sound mitigation initiative. So folks may have heard that this past fall, the Burlington International Airport gained federal approval to begin a sound mitigation program for those residents that were most impacted by the airport and the F-35 flight patterns. The number of homes impacted in this area is in excess of 2,500 in the communities of Winooski, South Burlington, and Burlington. So as you might imagine, there's a huge overlap in what is involved with sound mitigation and weatherization. Think of the home envelope as its primary defense system to this noise. And you can already imagine better windows, better insulation in your attic, better doors, less air conditioners in the window. And I think those are the types of efforts you're going to see out of this, types of changes you're going to see with these homes over the next several years. So VGS stepped up as a local partner for this multi-year effort. That would be managed by the airport with federal funding, and we've committed to 10% of the matching funds to do those projects. In 2021, we're going to be involved in the pilot program involving around 10 to 12 homes, and also in the design of the larger program that will begin to scale up in 2022. Another initiative that we're involved in is what we're calling sort of the Townhouse Condo Initiative. Many townhouses and condo developments across our service territory, you've seen them. They've really, as Chittenden County and Franklin County, Addison County have grown, you've seen these developments kind of pop up. And so over the last few years, we've been able to replicate an approach that has some economies of scale, and we can address this type of housing stock. Many of these are sort of in the vintages between 1970 and 2000, and they typically both have equipment aging out and weatherization needs to bring them up to standards. Our approach is typically to build a relationship with the residents there. Typically, somebody will call in and say, my home is not very comfortable, or my bill's too high. And that begins a conversation, and we learn a little bit more about the infrastructure of the entire development, about the homeowners association, the governance structure. And then we begin to engage those developments sort of as a whole, and that creates incredible efficiencies of scale, economies of scale in terms of addressing a lot of customers at once. And then the last initiative that we're going to be involved in has been mentioned by everybody else on the Zoom call so far, was workforce innovation. This is obviously key to scaling up a program. We are going to invest resources in this, working with our efficiency partners, working with our contractors, and working with our training partners. We think that there's a lot of room for innovation in this space. So we want to begin to come up with our partners, come up with ideas that connect contractors that are looking to grow with initiatives that overcome the barriers to their growth, and working with the training partners to help us overcome those barriers. The goal really is to directly address the contractor barriers. Great. On our residential side, I think the big story here is our focus is on increasing the number of weatherization projects, and both immediately and long term. One major problem that we set out to solve since I came on last summer was that our programs weren't really aligned across the efficiency utilities. So this was causing a lot of confusion in the marketplace between contractors and customers, and even within the program staff itself. There was no common definition of what a weatherization project was, what were the quality assurance standards, and how about even the rebate and financing structures that our customers were seeing as offers. So we really worked together in the fall to really bring our programs together to make them more aligned, both around the process that the contractors and the customers take, but also internally about the business processes to create these efficiencies to make our program grow. There's really actually never been a better time to weatherize your home in Vermont, particularly VGS customers. That we have some really, really great rebates and financing offers. If you're a single family home owner, you can get up to 50% of your weatherization project paid for. And then we have a rebate for landlords where the tenant is paying the bill. And that's a really important feature of our weatherization program. We'll pay up to 75% of the project in the cases where the tenant is paying the bill. And that creates, typically overcomes that barrier of the first cost for the landlord, and then the benefits begin to flow through to the tenants and their lower energy bills. We also have financing programs and products that look a lot like what Efficiency Vermont has and BED has. We have 0% financing for our weatherization projects, but also will support the customer if they want to put in a heat pump or they want to do another type of a window replacement project. We have a slightly higher rate for folks who want to bundle in things beyond weatherization. We'll also cover any kind of health and safety issues that are in the way, that are an impediment to the weatherization project, such as vermiculite or knob and tube wiring. We allow the customer to fold that into the project as well. Next slide. We also run a commercial program, and there is quite a bit of thermal savings within this program. Our major strategy is to really develop that relationship through key account management with the customer, to build those long-term relationships so we can align our services and products with the customer's business objective. Collaboration is the key here. When we show up with a customer, we really want to be communicating with Efficiency Vermont and also the distribution utility. Customers really like it when we show up together. It doesn't waste their time. Plus, we have the resources that are needed to have the most impact with the customer. Also, the large customers tend to have very complex types of projects, but those complex projects involve processes and manufacturing processes, but they also lead to huge savings, huge thermal savings in our market. Small, medium business customers typically have smaller scale down projects that are focused on equipment and on weatherization. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tiana.
Yes, thanks. And so there has been a lot of discussion, as I have observed over the last couple of weeks, and as you're considering all of this, around low and moderate income offerings. So wanted to call out specifically what VGS does within this space. So through the low income assistance program, that again is very similar to Efficiency Vermont. Customers that are 80 to 120% of area median income, 20% discount on rates, VGS rates for those customers. For renters, as Richard mentioned, we pay 75% of the weatherization project. That's really to get landlords to move on these projects. Obviously that trickles down to the residents, to the tenants within there, which are oftentimes low and moderate income individuals, and they get to see those savings show up on their energy bills. Apartments become more comfortable and they're healthier thanks to that program. 0% financing, so that is something that is available for all of our customers. As both Darren and Rebecca mentioned, these projects tend to cost a lot of money, and there isn't a tremendous appetite for getting a loan for $8,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000. But we do provide it. For our comprehensive audits, so those are customers that are higher than typical use. That's a really great program that we offer at no cost to customers. They can get a full comprehensive audit from one of our really expert auditors that we have on staff. If customers go through with that project, so the recommendations that we make, and they're income qualified, we put a $500 adder onto those programs to get them to move forward and do the entire project all at once. We do support CVOEO's weatherization program. We pay half of 50% of all the projects in our territory. Any VGS customer that goes through CVOEO, we pay 50% of those. We have a mobile home program where we pay 100% of the weatherization for anyone who's income qualified, 75% for anyone who's not income qualified. And then we have condo offerings as well. So that's just a prescriptive incentive to say, we'll put $750 towards weatherization work that you do. And again, oftentimes low and moderate income individuals are living in those two housing types. So with that, I think I will just end before turning it over for questions to say that I know that this was a really quick, broad overview of energy efficiency from VGS's standpoint. I hope that I'm leaving you all today with a better understanding of the fact that energy efficiency is really instrumental in VGS decarbonizing and accomplishing our climate plan. We have around 45,000 residential customers. And when you compare that to the around 350,000 homes statewide, that means 1 in 7 Vermonters has access to, funded weatherization through our program. And so we're really proud of that. And again, through Richard's team and through the work that we're doing around making sure that we accomplish our climate plan, we're really doubling down on our efforts around energy efficiency. And happy to end the slides and answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much. One quick question, just to make sure I understand, is the different programs you just laid out on the last slide, for instance, partnering with CVOEO, et cetera. Are you only in homes that are VGS customers currently? I mean, is
Correct.
that a common denominator? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And so, as Darren mentioned earlier, many of the customers in Burlington are VGS customers as well. Wherever there is weatherization work or thermal efficiency work to be done, that work is done by VGS. And so any of our customers. I will say that it also includes customers that have signed up, but not necessarily have been able to connect into the system yet. So for customers down in Addison County that may still be waiting for that connection, we're able to go in and they're able to get incentives on efficiency equipment, weatherization, as well as future customers for VGS.
Okay, great. And you mentioned workforce training connection. So
yes,
when you're talking about workforce training, are you talking about retraining VGS employees to take on tasks they didn't used to do, or are you talking about helping support the development of those vendors that you subcontract with or partner with?
I'll let Richard go into more detail on that. But one thing I do want to mention in terms of workforce development, and Richard mentioned it earlier, is some of these special initiatives and projects that we're taking on are really a chance to galvanize the workforce around weatherization. So BTV Sound is a really good example where there may be local contractors who bid on that work, and that's sustained work, sustained long-term work that they know that they can count on for a number of years to come. That and then partnerships like what we did over the summer, both with Efficiency Vermont as well as BED. We funded 8 people that had been recently displaced because of the pandemic, and so we're being retrained in the weatherization industry, and that was through CEDO and Resource. And so it's really the workforce development side of things, but it's not always obvious when you're looking through and we're talking through the incentives, just all of the work that's being done in the periphery around workforce development to ensure that those programs are successful. So Richard, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Just a little bit. Yeah, this is really about helping contractors that want to expand. But if you think about it from the contractor's point of view, finding qualified people that they don't have to spend a lot of time with, and that will stay on the job for a while after they've been trained, is really challenging. So it's definitely looking at that mindset that I would, from the contractor's point of view, I would grow, but for these things, right? That I don't have time, or I don't have the money for training, or we're too busy. So we're taking that interest and trying to figure out exactly how we can overcome that barrier with that particular contractor, with our training partners like Workforce for Women, Resource, and some of the other training centers. There's another piece to this. I was talking to the folks at this Burlington Community and Economic Development Office who run the lead program. And they had a similar problem. They didn't have any lead paint removal contractors. So they approached construction firms, knowing that there was going to be a steady funding source for this work. They approached construction firms and see if anybody was interested in expanding what they do, diversify their business model into this lead paint removal piece. So I think that's another step we want to take, is really to engage associated sectors in the market that might be looking to expand into weatherization, given the fact that there's going to be some fairly steady funding and an increased demand for weatherization services.
Great. And under your demand resource plan, are you allowed to, use your dollars to help build that workforce? That's a allowable effort. Senator McDonald raised that question with Efficiency Vermont. Similar question.
We do have some budget for education training. We would be looking to partner with the other efficiency utilities, EVT and BED, but also to work with the training folks themselves, like Vermont Works for Women, to leverage our dollars with grants that they can achieve. So it would be a combination of funding sources for that.
Just as we talk about consistency of funding to do weatherization work, are you consistently funded to help do the workforce development piece? Because that's going to be a crucial component along with building a bigger program.
I would say that the budget for education and training is inadequate for scaling the program on our own. So we have to take this other approach of working across the other efficiency utilities and the training partners and grants. So I know that Resource put together a program that leveraged a Department of Labor grant, for example, and we were able to provide some sort of what we call local matching funds for that grant. But I think that the question around is there a certain pot of money that is adequate for scaling up weatherization contractors? The answer is it's not apparent to me.
Okay, and how about high school, the tech centers, the high schools? Do you have relationships with people there, either to come in to be technicians for your pre-existing business, or to come in and do work related to weatherization?
So we began actually last year working, reaching out to technical schools, specifically Essex and Burlington, to begin to develop those relationships. Sadly, because of COVID, much of the shadowing that was going on had to be paused. But we are working to develop those relationships because, as Rebecca said earlier, creating that demand for future jobs by letting Vermont's youth see that there's a potential for a stable job that keeps them here is really important. I also just want to amplify to your earlier question, Senator Bray. And I've heard Rebecca say this, and I've heard Darren say this as well. It's it's expected that the market will rise to meet the demand if there's consistent, stable funding. So I think you saw the graph that Rebecca put forward that shows, there's a bit of a cliff coming for not just a bit of a cliff, but a cliff coming in funding for weatherization. It's hard work. It's difficult work. Weatherization work, you're in hot attics and the pay is not so great. But if we send a signal out to the market that this is something that's going to be stable, consistent, and well-funded over a large period of time, similar to the BTV Sound project, then I think we have hope that the market will rise to meet that demand.
Okay. And just to be direct about it. So when you're saying pay's not so great, what does that mean for a starting wage for someone who's just coming into the this kind of work?
That's a great question. I don't know that I know exactly what the starting wage is. Richard, do you?
It really depends on the business and their business model. It really runs the gamut from $13 an hour to livable wages. And some of the firms that are out there are actually trying to make sure that they do pay livable wages and that they provide benefits. And I think that's one component of foundational component of attracting folks to the job. Career path is another. What are the skills that they're learning? How can those translate to a career? That's another piece to it. But the lowest wage jobs, they have a lot of turnover. People come and go, and that's a problem.
Sure. Okay. Well, great. Anything else you want to share with the committee that you didn't get to yet? Or any questions from the committee for Vermont Gas? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and
thank you.
completing our tour of energy efficiency utilities this morning.
Thank you
and
for
hanging
having
in there
us.
all the way through.
Yes.
So committee, we're going to just do a little committee organizing business for 2 minutes, and then we'll adjourn for the morning. So I just wanted to tell Ms. Smith and Mr. Donnelly, if you, it's not rude to just check out in case you don't want to hear committee organizing chat.
Thank you.
So thanks again for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome to
Thank you very
stay,
much.
but you may want to move on by now. So committee, I just wanted to review today the executive order that we wrote a resolution on last week. Was read in, we'll go to notice tomorrow, action Thursday, Friday. We heard from a number of witnesses on 2 days. There were some people that, I'll just be simple and direct about this. 3 people expressed an interest in providing testimony that we didn't hear from. One was my mistake. It was an email that I set aside, and my fault. I lost track of it, and I belatedly got back to that individual. I haven't heard anything about whether or not she is still interested in providing testimony. But just to make sure that everyone's comfortable, that anyone who asks to speak has a chance to speak, I'm going to steal a little time from tomorrow morning's schedule. I think actually it will fit in fine, and just hear folks who had something to share with us. I don't know that, the question will be, does it change anyone's mind about what our position is? And I don't know the answer to there. That's a personal decision for each person.
Sorry, just to clarify,
yeah,
you're not asking for a revote.
No,
Yeah.
I just felt like for the sake of dotting I's, crossing T's, if there's a chance to hear from someone that wanted to speak that didn't get on the schedule last week, I want to offer them the chance. It's I actually work hard to try to make sure that we always hear from anyone who wants to speak to the committee. It's very rare that we can't fit somebody in 6 years, almost never. And I think the only times it's ever happened is if it was someone who'd been with us multiple times already, and we were under the gun, to get something out, for instance. Senator Westman.
Oh, I was adjusting my screen.
Oh, I thought that was.
But if you do we plan on taking up a bill on Act 250 going forward?
Well, so I'm going to talk again I've talked to Julie Moore since she was in committee, and since we voted out the EO. Because this proposal to reform the NRB and district commission is the administration's proposal, I was making a genuine offer, and the resolution is includes the same language where we say, if you could bring us some language, that's the basis. I said I'd be willing to introduce a bill. So the door is truly wide open for them to bring language. But I think this isn't being cute. It's like, if someone has a proposal, the best person to express that proposal is the people thinking about it. So I think we will work on Act 250. I'm confident about this session. Exactly what we work on is going to depend in part about who brings what to the room. You know, so I don't know if that's if that's a complete answer for you, or if they're looking for more.
I I'll just say it's my hope. I'm hearing from a bunch of the people that are building affordable housing and saying that they're having trouble in downtowns doing that. I can tell you that Lamoille Housing Authority said that they hoped we would do something in that area. So I'm just, if we're going to take up a bill and we're going to have a give and take with the administration, I'm not opposed to people testifying now, but I think that's the most important time for us to hear from people.
Right.
Well, and
yes.
I think, I personally think there's some transportation issues with Act 250. I think when I hear from affordable housing groups that it's a problem, I hope we take those up at some point. And the way this was presented to us, it's a yes or no vote.
Right. Thank you. I agree. I mean, when I wrote back to the two people that we might hear from, or perhaps even three tomorrow, I had said to them, because we're in take it or leave it land, we can't, and you're bringing, and they were indicating, decades of experience with Act 250, some challenges with it, interests in making changes. I said, I'm sorry to say that at this moment, we really can't use your expertise because we don't have the opportunity to do anything other than, an thumbs up, thumbs down on the kind of outline of a remodeling the district commission and NRB. And so I said, I explained what was going on, and the two people wrote back and said, well, thanks very much for explaining, and we look forward to coming in when there's a bill for us to work on with you. So I do believe that we've respectfully engaged anyone interested in working with us on this. Okay, well, I'll still see if there's a chance for them to touch base with us tomorrow in our schedule, so that prior to the floor, we'll have dotted I's, crossed T's, et cetera. Thank you for reminding us. I know that Senator Sirotkin shares an interest in downtown affordable housing development. This has come up. This was part of what that got worked on last spring, whatever, in 237 and H926. And I don't think, honestly, anyone was entirely satisfied with the results. I think this committee's short position was, we don't necessarily care what you call it, as long as the planning is of equal quality. There was, and to Senator McCormick's point of view, I think, well, he'll speak for himself, but one thing I've taken to heart is many people treat Act 250 as though it's a penalty or a burden. And I've always believed that it's a useful planning tool. If it's causing problems, then let's fix the tool, but not try to throw the tool away. And problem definition is, I think, always been one of the challenges. There's a sort of a cloud hanging over Act 250 in some people's minds. And when I ask them to be specific about where they're actually running into a problem, fairly often they have a challenge in articulating what that problem really is. Senator McCormick.
Yeah, just to expand on that, I observed that people use the term Act 250 kind of like the way they'll use the word Kleenex or a Coke. it's a generic term. And as often as not, a complaint about, Act 250 is a complaint about A&R, or it's a complaint even about town ordinances and town planning. And I think Act 250 gets, as I say, well, it's become a generic term, and it's not. It's a particular law. It's a particular process. And if there are problems with it, and there are problems with virtually everything, then that's probably the defenders of Act 250 have to answer for those problems. But we shouldn't have to also be answering for every other problem that a developer encounters.
Well, I'm not sure if Act 250 has brought us world peace yet. So
That's right.
There's another one. Okay, so I'm not going to kid around. We have caucus, at least Democratic caucus at 12:15, Senator Westman. It's a big room. You're invited to join us if you would like to come in. Bring a sandwich, whatever you like, and